and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Normally, during the week on Tuesdays, about 45 times a year at 4:20, we would have Baylor Director of Athletics, Mac Rhodes. That's obviously, we've said this before, on vacation. I think he probably flew into Texas sometime in the last 24 hours to kind of help get things together. I also had someone, Jeremiah Dickey, who's the athletic director now at Boise State. It worked at Baylor, worked with Mac Rhodes at Houston as well, and I guess what, other places, said that this is when he is special. This is what makes him who he is. This is from Jeremiah Dickey, that like when all chaos is out there, Mac is one of those where time stops. The ball goes in slow motion and he sees it at a different level. That doesn't mean he's not like concerned, but this is when he does his best work, although we're not going to be able to see that immediately. And that's from somebody we have great respect for in Jeremiah Dickey at Boise State, and had a text about whether they're involved. You never know. At some point, I don't think right now they're in play, but you never know.
Yeah, well, I know we've got a lot of new people listening from all around the country. I'm sure the Missouri fans will have a text about what you just said in a second. They don't quite view Mac Rhodes the same. But, yeah, no, he's been money since he's arrived in Waco. He's had to deal with probably more than any athletic director in the country, I would say. I can't imagine how anybody's dealt with more issues than he's had to deal with from what he walked into originally, when no one would have wanted to really walk into that. He did, and He's helped guide them in a major way. So now, as I wrote in my article a few days ago, this is his biggest test. You know, the NCAA was one thing, and, I mean, it's so odd that they could drag this out. I mean, they've already dragged it out 5 years, but they could drag it out so long that they're not even relevant in the punishment. That's crazy to me. But we'll see what happens there. But he's dealt with that as best he can. It's not in their hands at this point and hasn't been for months and months now. And there's been coaching changes. Kim Mulkey leaving, Matt Rule leaving. He's had to hire a couple there's been a lot. So all that being said, this is the biggest challenge, and it's not even really close. This is about not just the future of the football program for the next few years and whoever's the head coach. This is about the future of the university at the athletic level for, the next few decades.
Maybe 50 years.
Yeah.
You know why he deals well in chaos? Because he's not chaotic. He's not at all. So, like, people who are chaotic can't deal in chaos because it's two rapidly moving objects coming at each other.
So you mean to tell me that Twitter, with all the chaos going, would not be good at solving the problems of the conferences?
Yeah, chaos can't solve chaos. Chaos only, it just combines. The only thing that can solve chaos is steadiness, and Mac is one of the most steady human beings in the world. He's just steady.
All right, here's a text from a West Virginia graduate from the 609, an employee of an ACC school. SEC has no reason to merge with the ACC. It'll lower their per-school value of the conference. Notre Dame is not joining. They can sit on the sidelines as independent until the ACC doesn't exist, or they're free to join the Big Ten or the SEC. The ACC's only real hope long-term beyond their current TV deal is an allegiance or merger with the Big Ten or Pac-12. No clue what that would look like.
Yeah, and I'm sorry that the caller who brought that up that we didn't wrap around and talk about that, but I did actually have a thought on that, and it was that I could see the ACC and the SEC, if they were to do something, I don't know that it would be in the ACC's interest to, like, absorb themselves into it or really, like, formally, come together. But along the lines of what the Pac-12 and the Big Ten are talking about, I could definitely see that. Every once in a while you have a little cross schedules every year. Now, where it gets complicated is, like, where are your gimme games? Like, because if you're Oklahoma, are you going to still play Oklahoma State? And then you're playing those other 9, however many that are going to be SEC schools that you'll play. And then, if there were.
So then you got 2 more. And then you have a scheduling alliance.
Yeah, there's another one. You got to play Florida State this year, Miami.
Yeah, so then,
Clemson.
So say you've got to play, Miami, like you've played Miami and Oklahoma State in addition to 9 people in your league.
Right.
Which is probably what they would do with 16 teams. And then that leaves you one time to play Tulsa, who's no gimme either, so.
True. Now, having said that, this is going to be a different college football world.
Yeah.
You don't have to go unbeaten. You don't have to even lose just one game. There's going to be teams with 2 losses that get in. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a real shiny SEC team that's got like a controversial 3rd loss, or a field goal loss with no time left that That one, that's the third loss. But, the expanded playoff field also matters a great deal in this. And, I'm going to be interested to see what the SEC schedule actually looks like. But I don't know. I don't think we're getting any super alliances right now. I think everybody's kind of just, waiting on that next move.
So much to get to. 254-339-1122. We are available online. We have an app, SicEm365, and also YouTube, the channel that has exploded since the news back in Wednesday afternoon about at 2:30 Central Time.
Mark in Tacoma, Washington, thanks for your call.
Hey, guys, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, great show. Thanks for including me. Hey, I want to talk about Notre Dame in the ACC versus the Big Ten because you guys talked about Notre Dame a little bit earlier. I hate Notre Dame in the ACC. I hate it geographically, and I think it's a bad move for them revenue-wise. Geographically, the closest ACC school is Louisville. They're like 250 miles away, while there are 6 Big Ten schools within 250 miles. And then of South Bend. And then revenue-wise, the Big Ten right now, prior to these changes, is, if you count the revenue of member schools, the highest revenue earning conference at over $1 billion, which is $400 million more in the ACC. And to illustrate this, Florida State is the highest ACC revenue earning school. If they were in the Big Ten, they would be in 7th place. There are 6 Big Ten schools right now that earn more revenue than Florida State. And if you take the second from the bottom school in the Big Ten, which is Maryland would be ahead of 9 ACC schools. So to me, if Notre Dame ends up in the ACC, they're going to be carrying a bunch of schools that just don't produce a lot of revenue. So geographically and revenue-wise, I don't see why Notre Dame wants to be in the ACC. The fit for me is in the Big Ten. And that's my point. Thanks for taking my call. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark. That was some great stuff there. And look, I think part of the reason that, and again, college football is going to change. Part of the reason that Notre Dame aligned with the ACC is it just fits for a lot of their other sports because, the basketball and baseball and all that, but it works for them there. They're in a conference that fits with them. I for some reason, I think the older powers that be at Notre Dame they don't want to be in the Big Ten, but it does. I mean, he's right. It makes more sense for Notre Dame to combine financial power with the Big Ten than it would for them to go to the ACC and go, hey, we'll help you hold the water.
How good is that? As good as Oklahoma and Texas feel right now, or everybody in the SEC feels, or those who know that they're fine no matter what happens in the next week or maybe year or two. Notre Dame just sit back, eating their big old fat steak, and they don't have to do anything.
No,
powerful.
I was having a conversation. We were doing a podcast earlier, me and Grayson's like, well, Notre Dame has to. I'm like, Notre Dame doesn't have to do anything.
No.
They don't have to do anything. They are not going to be forced into anything. And really, why would you rush into like, all right, we better go join? Like, that's the thing that I see a lot is happening, and I don't blame anybody. I'm guilty of doing it myself, but it's like one little thing comes up, and it's like, well, they got to do this, and like we were talking about earlier, everybody's so impatient and wants to know what this end result is going to be that we're trying to like push the tracks forward and say, all right, well, Notre Dame, you need to do this, and then Texas Tech needs to go to the Pac-12, and it's just not going to move that quickly. And with Notre Dame, they just. What's the motivation?
And in the Big 12, it may seem as if they're, a statement here, a statement today, Dr. Livingstone at Baylor. They're not going to try to reveal their hand, although they got burned by that because they didn't know what was going on behind them. But it's not like they're going to jump out today and say, hey, by the way, we're talking with the Big Ten. Not that they are. They're not going to do that. I think that's why you're going to see them stay quiet. Hey, this is from Jason in New Orleans.
Can I say something more on that call? Just on the Notre Dame and the Big Ten, I mean, that would be the major move that would make a ton of sense if they could pull it off and would put them like neck and neck. Maybe still slightly lower than the SEC, but as far as money and all that goes, that'd be a money decision by the Big Ten if they could pull it off.
This is an interesting text, and this is a great text, and we appreciate it, from Jason in New Orleans. Admittedly, I tuned in last week to see the Baylor Tears after all the uproar in 2011. However, you guys are awesome. I had to come clean and say it. You've got a new fan and subscriber. Keep it up, and I hope you guys end up with a general college football show in the fall. Have you all mentioned the $23 million the SEC advanced each member because of COVID? Absolutely, the day it happened, and that is why they are badass, the SEC. Mm-hmm. I mean, That's like a boss, even though it's a year that perhaps you guys didn't make money in a company and you get a bonus check you weren't expecting. Because the company still, despite last year, is healthy as they can be and knowing what they're about to get in the future.
And believes in you.
Yeah, and they believe in you, and they take care of their own. And by the way, everybody got $23 million. Yeah. Vanderbilt didn't get 14, and Alabama didn't get 32. Everybody got the same, and that's why they're also a great conference as well.
And it again goes back to great leadership. They have great leadership in the SEC, and they went from one commissioner who'd been there a long time, who was fantastic, to Greg Sankey and didn't even skip a beat, and if anything, got more forward thinking, along the way. So, yeah, just an incredible job. And, look, man, appreciate the kind words on the text. We're all just college football fans at the end of the day. I think everybody's not necessarily in one lane just because of who they root for or who they cover or whatever. We're all just college football fans, so really appreciate everybody out there that's been enjoying it.
All right. Ron from Boone, North Carolina. You're on SicEm365 Radio.
Hey, thanks, guys. Great show. I just want to chime in a little bit and say that the Pac-12 really, really, really should grab some teams and form an East and a West division. But they won't. The Pac-12, they think about other things, and they don't want to deal with, they don't want to deal with religious schools. Mm-hmm. So the only conference that might, because they're smart, ACC, they might want to draft some teams because their leadership is not stupid. And the Big Ten, they're not going to move. The Pac-12 probably won't move, but the ACC might. And that's just what I wanted to share with you guys.
Thanks, Ron.
What's your favorite team?
I grew up a Longhorn fan because of Earl Campbell.
Okay.
But I got to tell you, I'm upset with Texas. I've been upset with them for about 10 years. Ever since, if you guys remember, back in, I think it was 2012, there was rumblings that Florida State and Clemson were not happy because they weren't making enough money. And there was rumors that Big 12 might grab them. And Texas killed it. Because the rich old man in Texas said, no, we're going to get Notre Dame, if you guys remember that scenario. And then right after that, the ACC locked everybody down and had them sign away their TV rights. So that was out of we couldn't grab Clemson and Florida State then. But there was a moment where Big 12 could have grown and had some ACC schools, but Texas messed it up, if you guys remember that.
I don't remember quite that story. Paul's an FSU guy. Isn't it amazing that what would have happened? I know if, in fact, that ever was going to happen. Can you imagine where things were if they would have gobbled up Clemson and Florida State 10 years ago?
Here's what
Texas
I think.
and Oklahoma wouldn't be leaving, I'll tell you that. If they were, it wouldn't be for money.
It was real that because remember, the Big 12 was breaking up. So the ACC was also kind of on the verge as well, and Clemson and Florida State were the only ones, and they were both mad because they didn't like the way the ACC scheduled some of their road games and some of that, so they were going to try to throw their weight around. I don't know whether Clemson and Florida State really got down the road of joining or wanting to do that, but I do know that it was very much at least used for leverage. To get the ACC back. So how real it got, I don't think we'll ever know, but it was a thing. I mean, it was there. And look, as a Florida State fan who lives in Central Texas and would love to see his alma mater play some games close to home, like, I do kind of hope that Baylor winds up in the ACC.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I think that'd be some nice trips, too.
Some great basketball, man.
It would be, no question about it. Here's one more text. I don't know if we got another call or not. Sure. This is from the 940. Best option, in my imagination, in my opinion, is to poach Brigham Young, Boise State, if possible. Take 3 or 4 ACC teams. In case West Virginia bolts, that's a Power 5. In my opinion, borderline, but finally not standing in a shadow. No matter if, in fact, they save the conference, and that's debatable. No matter who they bring in, no matter who it is or whatever cities they might be connected to, this is still about how can they find a way to generate better and more revenue in other media outlets or options. No matter if you just throw it against the wall and you get these 6 teams who stick. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good idea. I mean, but the reality of it, probably not much to it. Boise State, though, is an interesting team, and that's a team that's been rumored often whenever the Big 12's had these kind of things go. I mean, I think everything is under consideration at this point, probably if you're Big 12 leadership. I think you're looking at everybody that could be available. You're looking at every spot that could be available. You're looking at 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the line, what it's going to look like. So wouldn't rule it out entirely. Think it's probably unlikely, but won't say anything can't happen at this point.
Yeah. All right, Antoine from Maryland. You're on SicEm365 Radio. Thanks for your call.
Yes. How you doing? I just wanted to talk about the realignment that's going on. What I think is basically if the Big add any team is not going to affect anything. If the Pac adds a team, it's not going to affect anything. It's all about the viewership in the market. The SEC controls that. They did a great job partnering with ESPN, and I think ESPN controls everything. With everything with the playoffs and everything. So if you seen last year with COVID, the SEC played an all-SEC schedule, and everybody from the SEC was ranked high. You looked at Pac-12, played 5 games. No one's ranked. Their top team wasn't even ranked at all. So basically, whoever controls the market, that's what's going to control everything. And from my standpoint, being here in Maryland and dealing with telecommunications, ESPN, if you're affiliated with ESPN, you're going to get the most viewership. Recruits going to see you on TV, and kids these days want to be on TV, be seen, and it helps their marketability.
Yep.
Yeah,
no question. And now
stuff.
you can, whoever's in the SEC has always been able to say, you want to come play for us, we are basically the elite conference in America. People could disagree with that at times, but they have been. And now what Oklahoma and Texas can do is they can say, hey, we're Oklahoma and Texas, and we are now a part, or will be a part, by the time you get here, if you're the class of 23, 4, or 5, you're going to be playing in the SEC and playing with a logo on your chest.
Yeah, and we know how in bed Texas and ESPN have been with each other. I mean, obviously the Longhorn Network, and there was a little bit of that Fox momentum and Fox partnership with the Big 12. But, this is, we can't prove ESPN's involved, but I think we're all smart enough to realize they are involved to some extent as much as they possibly can be, and perhaps even had their hands in some of the orchestration of this. I wouldn't put that past that network by any means. But, they attach themselves to ESPN. They've set themselves up for life, and it's all about the eyeballs, like you said. It's not necessarily about competition or about it's all about the money and the TV.
And here's how ESPN got one over on Fox. They, of course, bought a chunk of Fox properties last year, which essentially was to get the Fantastic Four in the MCU. But I mean, that's what it looks like.
I'm glad they did it then.
But they also bought all the regional sports networks. So they bought all those RSNs, but then did they keep them? No. Sold them off for a profit to Sinclair, and now Fox is not in a place where they can really negotiate the same way that ESPN can, because they'd have to create networks that they just don't have. We got 2 more calls, and then we got to go to Chris Lovell.
A text from the 512, if Texas leads, can we see them play next year? Or is that not even possible?
See who play.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
I mean, I don't think anything's going to happen before 2022.
As much as Texas and Oklahoma were supposedly the leaders of the Big 12, I can't recall either school ever calling for a change in leadership. Bowlesby is there because Texas and Oklahoma got him to the conference. There was the thought that Dan Beebe was a puppet. And I have not heard that much about Bowlesby, although if you ask the other 8 remaining teams, and especially Baylor fans cannot stand Bob Bowlesby, there is that perception, and there is still thought. There are still people that think Bob Bowlesby did know that Texas and Oklahoma were talking to the SEC. That's probably unfair, but that is absolutely a perception.
And going back to the TV thing with Fox, they're going to want to get active, and that's what's driving a lot of the Pac-12, Big Ten scheduling alliance rumors is Fox in particular, and the fact that they're looking at ESPN now and going, whoa, wait a second, like we're losing OU and Texas, and ESPN's getting them full-time basically as members of the SEC. So, yeah, I think the TV partners have had a heavy hand in this as much as anybody, ESPN included, and they'll probably have as much sway in what happens next as anybody else as well. Because if Fox wants to start making some things shift, then they'll make it happen.
All right, coming up, Chris Lovell. We'll have 2 more calls or 1 more caller, a text or 2. But Chris Lovell, who covers Texas Tech, and his thoughts about what's going on in Lubbock.
All right, Connor from Cincinnati. You're on SicEm365 Radio. Thanks for your call.
Hey, I was just calling. I'm from up here in Cincinnati. I've been kicking this idea around where, you take the 8 remaining Big 12 teams, you take the top 4 AAC teams being Cincinnati, Central Florida, Memphis, and Houston. You go grab, a Boise State, a BYU, and you got 2 spots left open for 16 conference. You throw Tulsa, SMU in there. You essentially capture the Orlando market. and in Florida recruiting, you capture the Cincinnati market, which I think we're about 39th biggest market in the country. Also opens up the Ohio recruiting for the Big 12, as well as you capture most of the Texas market besides, Texas and A&M area. But, I feel like that could be a big fit and then maybe a chance to keep that Power 5 status and new recruiting and still keep a decent-sized market. Obviously, you're not going to, regain what you lost in Oklahoma and Texas, but it's a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound necessarily.
Connor,
a good way to put it.
That's a great call, Connor. Thanks for your call in Ohio. Yeah.
I think that that makes a lot of sense. BYU is very interesting in this. I mean, that's a brand that I think would have some appeal for the Big 12 and has in the past. But ultimately, I think as much sense as that makes, what we were just talking about is what's going to dictate that. It's the TV networks. Do they feel like UCF and Cincinnati and Memphis and Houston are going to, raise the stock of the Big 12 all that much? I don't know. I think that's where the TV networks once again come into play. And then, there was that report out there earlier about with Texas and Oklahoma gone, like the amount of money owed by the TV networks moving forward is like $9 million, whereas it was tens of millions of dollars. So the brand obviously goes down a great deal, regardless of anything else, just with OU and Texas leaving. And there's no amount to make up for that. But do the TV networks view those teams as ones that can make it up enough to make it worthwhile to move forward with the Big 12 in a new incarnation? That remains to be seen. And that's what's going to dictate whether or not they add schools or we see them all split up or whatever ends up happening.
All right, one more call, and then we go to Chris Lovell. It just says Davidson beats Floyd here from Wichita, Kansas. I'm sure that is a computer error. But Wichita, you're on SicEm365 Radio.
Hey there, I'm actually in Detroit. How you doing?
Thanks. No problem. Yeah, doing great.
I'm from Kansas.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I was wondering, what do you guys think are the chances of the Big 12 doing something bold, as trying to poach maybe Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Tennessee, Arkansas, instead of going the more modest approach with BYU, Cincy, Houston, which I'm not disparaging those programs.
Sure. Yeah.
I
think if they
I got you.
I think if they could, they would. But I don't think they can because the SEC is such a gold mine. It would be like quitting your job at Fort Knox. I mean, you just wouldn't do it. And I guess you don't get money. You
I don't know what they pay at Fort Knox.
But yeah, but I mean, you just wouldn't leave, your great job because they're like
if you're looking for safety, you wouldn't leave your job at Fort Knox.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, you just don't do it. So I think if they could have, they would have. Because again, I think if any time in the last 10 years they could have gotten Nebraska and Arkansas back, they would have. Because it would have made a few years ago when they were talking about expanding.
If you are Nebraska making $50 million
but they can't get those teams back.
And Arkansas is about to make even more than they make now. You're not leaving. No matter what, you're just not leaving.
Yeah.
Even if you're pissed off at the conference, you're not leaving.
Yeah.
If it was about simply winning, then maybe some of those schools go, oh, shoot, now OU and Texas are here, and our odds of, winning as much as we even were before are now limited. But ultimately, it is about the money, and I agree that they could potentially have better victory opportunities. The money's too much. There's just no way. And the SEC is not going anywhere, and they're not going to go anywhere as long as they're members. So it makes too much sense to stay.
All right, for a lot of you that just joined us in the last week or in the last hour or so and